Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of AI Horizons with me, Jonathan Blaber, head of AI staffing for Eden Smith Group. Um, really designed this podcast, as you guys know, to share knowledge and wisdom of what's going on in the AI market and really speak to the experts that are living and breathing this on a daily basis. So we have a true expert with us today. She has held many different roles, most recently Chief AI Officer. She's worked at startups, she's worked at enterprises and everything in between. So a real great time to get some new knowledge onto the table. So welcome, Sarah Schlobohm.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you. It's always good to have experts here to kind of guide us through what's going on in the market, talk about challenges. Certainly, there are many when it comes to AI. You've selected a really interesting topic today, which I think certainly a lot of leaders within businesses right now, startups to enterprises, what to do when you've been given an AI mandate. And I think that's such a fascinating topic because everyone's probably being told, right, I want AI, but why? So I'd love to get a bit of an understanding about, why you chose this topic, Sal.
Yeah, this is so common. This is what an awful lot of leaders are facing. I think if you're in a really big enterprise, if you're in one of these big global megacorps, maybe you've had someone hire on consultants, the big brand name consultants, they put in a whole AI transformation program for you. If you're a little startup, you can use whatever tool you feel like trying because there's all of like, five people in the business, and that's hardly a transformation project. But for all the businesses in the middle of that, they're often handed down this sort of mandate from above. The board wants AI, the investors want AI. What are you doing about that? What can you do? And they're like, well, I don't know. What should I do? And so when I'm speaking to people, when I'm at events, when I'm giving talks on a podcast, when I really connect with people about is they want to know like what's going on, what do I actually need to know about AI, what's real, what's hype, and what do I do about it? So I think this is a really relevant topic for a lot of leaders who are living and breathing this right now.
Yeah, huge. I mean, I speak to leaders on a daily basis, and it often is the is a challenge of understanding, right, you know where do we start basically? And I think that's a great place for us to start. When the board or an investor says we need AI,
hmm
where should the
Yeah,
leader actually start on that journey?
yeah. I think one of the first things to do is to avoid the trap of sort of being a solution looking for a problem. If you're implementing AI because you think you need to implement AI, that's probably not going to lead to a great business outcome. It needs to address a real business need. And while it's true that you do need to implement AI, you probably do need to be making use of new technologies and things like that. Just doing AI shouldn't be a goal in and of itself. The whole point of it is that it's a tool and it's there to improve your business. And you need to do it, right? You do need to think about it, but don't think of the goal as doing AI.
Yeah, I think we certainly hear that a lot. How do you know have you seen it before? I mean, maybe you might have experienced it
Many times.
yourself. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Where we want AI, but why?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
how do you get to the why, I guess, is what's quite interesting.
Yeah, so there are some sort of at this point standard use cases, right? There are some places where it makes a lot of sense. One of the things I really recommend is before you jump in and do something customer facing, do something internal just to sort of understand what the problems are. Because they're slightly different than implementing a different technology project. AI is different from traditional software engineering. It has different risks, it has different problems, but it also has different opportunities. So yeah, one of the things to do is to say, okay, where do I actually have a problem in the business? What are people complaining about? What problem do I have where if I could throw 100 reasonably bright, but not particularly in depth, interns at it, could that problem get better? And that's a great place to look at automation and improvement. So your people on the ground probably already know all these places. People already know all these things about like, well, my job would be great if I just didn't have to do this one thing that they hate doing. It's the thing that you do on autopilot, you don't really like doing. It doesn't like bring you joy when you're doing your job. It's not fulfilling. That's the best use case for AI straight away. And that's for a couple of reasons. One, that probably points to a pretty inefficient process. So it's probably a good place to look for cost savings. But it also can really help with adoption of AI within the business. People are scared of it. People are scared it's going to take their jobs. Well, why not introduce a program to them that's going to help them improve their jobs, to get rid of that part of their job that they absolutely hate? So that's one of the best places I can say to look at. Obviously, every business is different. And businesses do tend to polarize a bit. On the one hand, you get businesses who just don't know where to start, really resistant, don't want to use AI anywhere. And on the other hand, you get ones that are so willing to embrace it and have like 100 ideas and they want to do them all at once. Um,
Hmm.
and you've got to find a good middle ground. You've got to find like probably not just one. You probably don't want to put all your eggs in one basket, but also you can't do absolutely everything, and not everything's going to bring the same benefit either.
Yeah, yeah. I mean that's something again I hear a lot. Um, and it's another interesting thing I hear is that does it need to be AI? Is the solution, is the problem, can it be solved with just a change of process? Does it need to be a technology solution? And that's
Yeah.
a big question as well, right?
And that's such a good point because sometimes the biggest benefit is just looking at that process and saying, do we even need to do that at all anymore? And in a sense, if you're thinking of everything as an AI transformation project or some kind of, business change project, that's still a benefit of the project. If you look at a program and say, you know what, you need to do something here. It might not be AI, but here's a simpler answer, then by all means do that. But I think if you get into that mindset of we must use AI because, the board says we have to use AI, you might wind up using a more complicated tool for the job than you need to. And I always say you don't need a chainsaw to butter your toast, right? Sometimes the answer is like a really well organized Excel spreadsheet. And when you can take the simpler option, you generally should.
Are you allowed to say Excel was a data leader? Is that allowed? I hear it's very frowned upon.
I mean, other spreadsheets are available. But no, actually,
Brilliant.
I'm a huge fan of Excel. And so I'm a chartered accountant, and the ICAW is having a big celebration of Excel's its 30th or 40th anniversary this year. And the fact that it's so pervasive tells you why sometimes just a really simple, well organized tool is the right
Mm.
thing for the job.
See, the thing is, in the recruitment industry, and I certainly a lot of leaders that I've worked with and work with currently, we see Excel as the enemy because so much so much reliance on an Excel spreadsheet where it just needs to be all in one place. So yeah,
Well,
100%.
that's
So
true.
that's
And
why I think we get the negative answer from me there. But as a
it's
as a,
true.
a
And you especially have to be careful about like storing PII and how you share that and all that kind of thing. But yeah, sometimes the simple answer is correct.
absolutely, absolutely. So just going back to top, I mean, you've used so many great analogies today, by the way. Um, and this one really I love, and you know what it's going to be. I'm going to let you say it. I'm going to let
Okay.
you say it. So
Okay.
over to you.
So I started my data career in the sort of big data capital letters era. And at the time, economist Dan Ariely tweeted about this, and he said, big data is like teenage sex. Everyone talks about it. Nobody really knows how to do it. Everyone thinks everyone else is doing it, so everyone claims they're doing it. And I think that's exactly where with AI at
I
the moment.
think that is absolutely spot on for sure. Is that something that you you kind of come up with yourself? I mean, I know Dan Airley, right?
Dan Ariely, yeah, he's actually a really interesting guy. He had an amazing TED talk. He's got a great series of books called Predictably Irrational. But But yeah, that analogy I made myself. But funny enough, I was at a speaking event where somebody else had made that same analogy. And so the speaker introduced, and here's a speaker who once compared AI to teenage sex. And I'm like, were they at that conference in Sydney? How did you know that? But yeah, I think it's just so true for those of us who have lived through that big data era and that quote resonated then. It absolutely resonates again now.
Absolutely. I mean, that it is such a it is such a relevant analogy for sure. So where are we with the current state of AI, and where are we with kind of pushing back to leaders where we don't necessarily want, don't feel that AI is the right choice. And where are we with that, and what can leaders do differently?
I think it really comes back to that question of why do you want to use AI? Figure out your good business use case, figure out what that gets you. So I think we have seen that I think it was an MIT report saying that 95% of AI pilot programs fail to deliver any impact on P&L, even though we've poured lots of money into that. So there's a lot that because we haven't done this yet, because AI is different, even from the machine learning sort of stuff that has gone before in the previous 10, 20 years, we're not great at estimating the ROI out of it yet, obviously, and you've got to give that a try. But I think the other thing to think about is there is also potentially a huge economic disadvantage to not engaging with it. Yes, you have to pick the right topic, but sometimes it's about long-term survival. It's about that strategic existential investment in something. So the leaders are right there, the people who are mandating AI, they see that part of it, but then the other part of it is, okay, and let's translate this into something that improves the business on a day-to-day level, saves costs, brings in more money, all the useful things that we're thinking about in business.
It's really interesting you say that, especially about long-term survival. It does kind of seem like that at the moment. That I feel like we're kind of going from like a huge amount of FOMO in the market, to now companies are slowly starting to kind of take things a bit more, I want to say seriously, whether that's the right word or not, but you're really um going into this deeper. But at the
And
very start of it,
sorry.
yeah, go on. Now I was gonna, yeah, gonna let you say.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, don't get me wrong, there is so much hype, there is so much nonsense that's out there, but it is also super important. It would be like trying to ignore the internet when it really became evident that absolutely every shop, every business needed to have a website. So you can't skip that, but that doesn't mean that every website needs to be all bells and whistles and I don't know, dancing hamsters or whatever we had.
Yeah, yeah, no, exactly. And you got the whole blockbuster example that I always use. Probably the audience
Exactly.
is fed up for me talking about it, but it really is a great example. So we are in that kind of that phase of the market, and I think it's great to talk about these topics. But I'd love to know, why do so many AI pilots fail? Because that is a big thing in the market. A lot of use cases just don't follow through. What do you see as the big reasons why?
I think there are a couple of reasons. I think the data isn't ready, and I think the people aren't ready. And to some extent, I can throw most of those problems into one of those two buckets. A lot of the time, you need to have the right data. I mean, before we called it AI, a lot of the same concepts we're talking about, we called machine learning. And that describes what happens a bit better. The machine learns from patterns that it sees in the data. So if you give it incomplete data, if you give it incorrect, contradictory data, if you give it data that you can't trust, then you're never going to get good response of it. It's the class of garbage in, garbage out phenomenon, or if we're feeling particularly British, rubbish in, rubbish out. The I have to translate for the local audience sometimes. Uh, the so a lot of it's that, right? And connected with that, the new risks around generative AI is that if you don't control that better, you can hallucinate more. So it will make up data, which is a huge interesting AI specific risk. The other problem I think is yeah, around people, because people are afraid of losing their jobs. People don't necessarily want to engage with it, or people put these programs in silos and they don't really understand the problem. But sometimes if you take like a real Pareto analysis to these things, I worked with one company that did a fantastic job of doing that well. In one of their processes, they identified that like 70-80% of errors were down to just 5 common mistakes that people made. And so we built an AI system that could check for those automatically. And then, much like your email now reminds you, hey, it looks like you forgot to attach something when you said the word attached, it could say, hey, it looks like maybe you didn't do this thing with your document. So sometimes that's the best approach, but you don't know that unless you really speak to the people on the ground and understand what their problems are. You could say, let's go in all guns blazing. We're going to put in this new platform. It's going to do this. It's going to talk to everybody. It's going to have agents working with agents. Yeah, but actually, if you solved like 5 problems, you could solve most of your issues.
Yeah, and that's the big thing at the moment is that there is a lot of skepticism with people losing their jobs, right? It's
Yeah.
unfortunately AI is here. It's not
Hmm.
going anywhere. You know, it's time to work together to make this right. If we get it wrong, it could be serious consequences, obviously, to having bad AI rolled out to the market. So what does success look like when implementing AI? There's a lot of conversation. Is it ROI? Is it having a competitive advantage, or is it just something else?
It's a really good question. And I think that's going to be really specific to every business. It, and if the mandate is just do AI, well, then you can tick that box by saying do AI, right? You could implement anything and tick that box, but then that's not going to be the right answer. So in some cases, it is going to be ROI. It's probably not going to be the ROI that people were claiming AI was going to give even a year or two ago. It's not going to suddenly be making whole teams redundant. We've seen some places that have tried that and then have hired back a lot of those people in terms of the copywriters or whether it's programmers and anything like that. I think um, yeah, I think it's being able to articulate what problem does this solve for the business.
Yeah.
And if you can put a monetary value on that, awesome. The board is going to prefer that. Absolutely. But as long as you can articulate, actually, this solves problems, this saves us costs, this increases customer satisfaction, this increases employee satisfaction. We have all these metrics already. It's just thinking about which of those actually matter to this business case and why we're doing this.
Yeah, and I think as well, setting expectations right with the board. The last thing you want to do is get into a project that's hugely backed financially with high expectations or wrong expectations, and you're putting your name on the line as a leader of that project, right? So yeah, hugely important.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you know,
if
and
you're
that
go
goes
on.
both ways on the ROI. So I have seen situations where people are like, right, yeah, we're going to put in this AI, it's going to be super transformative, and you have a budget for about one person to do something, and it's meant to deliver these massive costs. So it is being realistic that these things are difficult. They do take some trial and error, they do take some integration, and they do take experts who are often kind of expensive.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, if you were advising a senior leader today,
Hmm.
what first three steps would you recommend when given an AI mandate from the board?
Hmm. It's a good question. I'd say understand what problems you already have in your business, understand which one of those you could tackle fairly quickly with that analogy of could you throw 100 people at it and make it better? And then if you can find a couple of those choices, sort of rank them by what you get at the end of the day. But start relatively small, start with a pilot, but don't get stuck in proof of concept limbo. Always make sure that don't do it yet. If you're going to build it the first time, just build a proof of concept. It doesn't have to be production ready yet, but you do need to have one eye on if this is successful, how will we actually implement it?
Yeah, I guess it's like a kind of a scary moment. Not scary if you really back yourself, but I guess if you're not prepared for the yes. I guess like you've done all of this work, you're like, might they may go for this, and like, yes, they've gone for this. Oh, what do I do? Like, it's you've got to prepare yourself, right?
Yeah, but I mean, it's also true that some proofs of concept should fail, right? If it can't
Mhm.
fail, then it's not much of a proof. It's just a very small pilot. So we should expect the answer to be no on some of these. And if you're in a business and people are saying yes, 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 green light every AI project, especially all at once, then that should raise a lot of red flags as well.
Well, yeah, that would be chaotic for sure. I work with enough clients where it's just a small implementation can bring enough problems and stress and challenges, etc. So I fully get it for sure. And what, any advice on, I guess, how leaders can really bring, the skeptical stakeholders or the board members that just really just too unsure. How can they bring them on the journey when the path to ROI isn't immediate?
Yeah, it's a real problem because especially when you hear these statistics about how many fail, um, people can get even more skeptical. I think seeing a proof of concept does help. Seeing how you would scale that is important. Well, I think looking at case studies of other businesses, similar businesses to yours, saying, okay, look, this company implemented this. This is what they got out of it. That's important. Sometimes the answer is actually now this is a hygiene factor. This isn't necessarily going to make us more money, but everybody else is doing it actually. Everybody else
Hmm.
has a chatbot actually, and this is how Jen said prefer to communicate in many cases. Um, then it just becomes a hygiene factor, just like, okay, yes, of course you have to have a website. Now it becomes, okay, now, yes, of course that website has to have a chatbot.
Mm, mm. Have you had it before? Not you personally, maybe, but perhaps you hear stories in the market where we're talking about AI governance.
Hmm.
Yeah, do board level, just leaders, do they understand the seriousness of AI governance and getting it wrong, or is that a message that needs to be conveyed all the time? What's your thoughts around that?
Yeah, that's a message that absolutely needs to be conveyed, and that absolutely I would love to see more sort of education at the board level about, because there's all sorts of things that are happening. There's new legislation popping up. There's the EU AI Act, which is pretty much like GDPR but for AI. Like it has that same intentional overreach. Okay, we're not in the EU, but there's so many instances where if you can even find the EU on a map, you're going to get hit by it. So it's really important to take that into account. You can't let that get you into like a paralysis about you have to have the perfect governance process and we want to put loads and loads of forms in, but you've also got to be really pragmatic. So I always say there are sort of two main risks to AI. The first is doing it badly, and the second is not doing it at all. And to some extent, those are the things that I would have in a global risk register.
That's a very powerful statement as well. I love that. I
And then,
really, really love that.
and there are lots of ways to do it badly, of course, but even those, I think you can sort of split that up a bit, which is like, here are some AI specific risks, and then here are all those regular risks that you're used to, but now they've got an extra AI twist on them. So we've always had risks around cybersecurity. Now malicious actors have access to AI and are coding faster and can exploit vulnerability stronger, for example. Right. So I think when you get into more granular level, so those two risks need to be at the board level. Then I think at the executive level, for each sort of individual project that you're talking about, you need to break it down and you need to see where you are against legislation. You need to see about where you are against, the data, the people, all of that's going to get a bit more project specific.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you've made so many relevant and interesting points today, Sarah. I really, really, really appreciate your time and the level of knowledge you have is fantastic. So really,
Most of it was hard earned.
really, really
I've got the
grateful.
scars.
Sorry, say that again.
Most of that knowledge is hard earned. I've got the scars because I learned that in a project the hard way. So
Yeah, but that's the thing though, right? If we can share the battle scars, hopefully there'll be less out there that go through the same. And I think that's really, really important. That's why I love bringing people on like yourself that can really share that industry wisdom. So thank you so much, Sarah.
no, thank you for having me.
I hope you'll join again. Once the AI market hits boom, which I really hope it does. I mean, I wonder, before we close, any predictions from you for AI? Is there anything else we should expect or anything interesting coming for 2026?
Oh gosh, that's a tough question.
I
Um,
know.
I I think we're getting to a really interesting inflection point. So the analogy that I always use is mobile phones. So many analogies, sorry, but I like them. Um, when we first got mobile phones, we used them as mobile phones, right? We took calls, but we took them in other locations. But now, like, when was the last time you actually spoke on the phone? When was it like you dialed via the phone network? That's just not what we do anymore. Suddenly, like, well, first you got texting, then you got the iPhone, and now you've just got like this supercomputer that sits in your pocket and alerts you every time, somebody posts a new cat photo. So we're almost at the point with AI where we've been doing the same stuff but better. And that's a lot of what I've actually been talking about here. Look at those horrible processes and make them better, because that's the first place to start. But soon we're going to flip over into that. Now we've got the iPhone moment of AI, and we're going to see the real capabilities of where this could go. And it's going to be amazing.
Love that. So we're going from like Nokia Snake to Apple iPhone pretty quickly. I love it. So it's a very exciting time, Sarah. Thank you very much for all of your insight and wisdom. All right, and best of luck to you for 2026 and further beyond.
Thank you so much.